Most rivalries derive from two clubs being close to one another or constantly challenging for titles. But this is the story of Eagles and Seagulls. Just how did football fans from the South Coast Liberal Party town and a suburb of South London 50 miles away come to blows? And why does the Crystal Palace versus Brighton and Hove Albion rivalry still persist? For those unfamiliar with the geography of the southeast of England, the M23 is an arterial highway that snakes its way through rolling hills to join London with the south coast. It also becomes the A23 and connects Crystal Palace Football Club from Selhurst in South London with Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club 50 miles to the south.
I don't have an understanding of it. I've been given the history, of course, the potted history, but I don't have anything particular to add. I'll just accept what the official version is out there, but I know the rivalry is very strong. It dates back a long time. And of course, every club has its classic derby match. We have several, of course, because we're a London club, but it's interesting that this one is regarded as the most important derby for the Palace fans, and we're preparing for it accordingly.
Crystal Palace, a side that historically fluctuated between the top two tiers of English football on a regular basis, does not lack for cross-capital rivals in either division. South of the river alone, it has the much unloved Millwall and former tenants Charlton Athletic, yet their key rival lies southwards at the end of those 50 miles of meandering tarmac. The origins of the tensions between Palace and Brighton stems from a series of incidents between the clubs back in the 1970s, when former teammate managers and arch-rivals Alan Mullery and Terry Venables were bossing Brighton and Palace respectively. The sides were forced to face each other 5 times over the course of the 1976-77 season, with the first 3 clashes ending in draws before things eventually boiled over in an FA Cup replay at Stamford Bridge. The match saw Brighton have a goal ruled out that they believed to be legitimate before they were forced to retake a penalty which former midfielder Brian Horton missed. Seagulls boss Alan Mullery was left furious with the decision to rule out the goal and caused controversy when he swore at the Crystal Palace supporters, sparking the derby that we have enjoyed ever since. Mullery spoke on the incident in his autobiography, writing, "I gave the Palace fans 2 fingers, then did an awful interview bad-mouthing their supporters and saying I wouldn't give a fiver for any of their players. I could have handled things better, but I just totally lost it." Many more controversial moments arose down the years, including Mullery becoming Eagles boss in 1982, only adding to the hostility, and the clubs now have nothing but dislike for one another.
Yeah, I've been reminded of how important it is pretty much every day. So that's going to be, it's always good, these games, they're important, of course, for our supporters, and it's important because it's the proximity of the 2 teams and the clubs. And I'm sure my memory of Selhurst Park is always lively. So Monday night with the Sky cameras there, it'll be a good atmosphere, hostile atmosphere. It's something that we're going to have to deal with, and we're going to look forward to it.
What started out as a competitive fixture gradually turned into a full-fledged rivalry that we see today. Lacking a true local rival, and now with the injected spice between the two, Palace and Brighton became the best of enemies. The rarity of the fixture makes the occasion of their meeting that much more special. That was until Brighton's promotion to the top flight back in 2017.
Well, I've certainly been probably made more aware of the rivalry in my time here than perhaps before. You know, I know Crystal Palace as a club very well. I know Brighton as a club very well, and as a player played against both clubs. But of course, it's only when you are here, and even in that first season, and the rivalry becomes more apparent and the reasons for it. So I am conscious of that. It's very much one for the supporters and the clubs, and let's say particularly the supporters, both sets of the supporters, and as with any derby game that you play, and it's one that you want to win for the supporters.
No rare matchup between the two was more critical to both teams' fortunes than when they met in the Championship playoff semi-finals during the 2012-13 season. At stake, a Wembley showpiece final and the chance to ascend to the Premier League, the richest, most watched league in the world. The first leg finished goalless at Selhurst Park, and Palace won 2-0 at the Amex in the second leg. Palace went on to win the playoff final that year and managed to stay in the Premier League in its first season, famously dashing Liverpool's title hopes with a late comeback from 3-0 down in the process. But more fuel was added to the already well-lit fire during that playoff semi-final, when Brighton were accused of sabotaging their opponents after a poo was found on Palace's dressing room floor. However, it was eventually revealed that it was the Palace bus driver that had done the dirty. Much has been made of the distance between the two clubs. There's 38 miles between Selhurst Park and the Amex, which is apparently a justified argument for belittling this rivalry as irrelevant. But to Palace and Brighton fans, it's laughable. This is a rivalry that dates back to the 70s, and in recent years, since the Seagulls moved to the Amex, has become two of the biggest games of the season. There's been huge highs for both, Palace pinching Brighton's then club legend Glenn Murray on a free transfer, who then went on to play a huge part in a promotion-winning campaign, whilst the Seagulls did the Premier League double over Palace during the 2018-19 season. But don't let me try to convince you. How do the fans at the heart of the story really feel about this rather different kind of rivalry?
I mean, for me, it's the biggest, the two games home and away, the first two I look at on the fixture list. I think the distance just matters little. I know people think it's a bit weird because we're so far apart and they call it the M23 or the A23 derby. I mean, as a Palace fan, it just has huge history for me, like the last decade or so, like going back to when Andy Johnson bagged a hat-trick against them, Joby McInnes last-minute goal to win at the Withdean, and then recently at the Amex. I mean, I can reel off so many games where we've had great memories. Wilf getting a double to take us to the playoff final. Like, I mean, yeah, it's huge for me. It's such an important part of being a Palace fan, is having that rivalry with Brighton. I mean, Charlton and Millwall are two important ones as well, but they just haven't been in the league for us. So yeah, I mean, I'm not too bothered about the distance. For me, it's a game that has so much like heritage and history, and we've both experienced it. I remember getting beaten 3-0 at their place, and then that year we beat them in the playoff to get to the final, and ultimately getting the Premier League where we've stayed. So yeah, huge for me.
I think one of the only things that Brighton and Crystal Palace fans will ever agree on is that our rivalry is the odd one out. It's the weird one in the group. It's the anomaly amongst rivalries. And it's beautifully bizarre, but that's what makes it special to both fan bases. And Palace fans will agree with me in the sense that you're always justifying why we're rivals. This happened and that happened. In such a short amount of time, obviously hate's grown between these clubs. But there's an arrogance from some of the footballing world that it's not a rivalry. Why are they rivals? That's just not how it is, and you've got to look deeper into this story about how this one game has then snowballed into 2 games and 3 games, and suddenly you've got 2 big fan bases that hate one another. And the rivalry is only ever going to grow. You have to look at Neil Maupay's equaliser the other day. That's not going to go down well. Shushing the Selhurst Park, it's not going to go down well. But events are going to constantly happen like that, and the rivalry is going to grow and grow and grow. It's not just going to vanish like some people feel like it could. It doesn't work like that. We've got 2 established Premier League outfits now that are playing each other a minimum twice a season. And rivalries are what make football. These are games that both fan bases look forward to all season long, and they can make or break a season. So obviously it's weird from the outside looking in, but Brighton fans love it. Palace fans definitely love it, even if they've got Charlton and Millwall round the corner. They look forward to us. They want to play us, and that's the way it is. And it's a brilliant rivalry.
The sides have met 107 times down the years, with Brighton winning 40 and Palace winning 38, with the foils shared on 29 occasions. Whilst despite their geographical differences, the bitter rivalry between Crystal Palace Football Club and Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club, to many, may still seem an odd one. But to these both sets of fans, it's a feud that remains, and perhaps will forever, mean more than any other.